business that I am in. And so, I'm more than happy to share my knowledge and share my experiences with anyone. I know I have Christina on today. She helps me behind the scenes with some of my branding for not only my company, but for some other things. And, we're going to be taking things to a new level over the next few weeks on sharing good news. I sent an email out to some of my partners in the business on Mondays, and I call it SGN, some good news. And I think in the world we're in right now, there's a lot of people that don't focus on the positive things that are happening. They focus on the things that are, somewhat negative. And I believe the world is a better place than it's perceived, and it's a healthier place than it's perceived. And so my whole goal here is to really just, again, share good news, share information, and hopefully help you guys level up in what you're doing. So, all right, guys. So today we're going to talk about recruiting, virtual recruiting, and just recruiting in general. And again, this could be recruiting for your fraternity or sorority if you're still in college. This could be recruiting for your 5-on-5 basketball team as you're picking up a team outside and as you're getting out of the house. This could be recruiting in the business you're in and building an organization. This could be just recruiting people to go out and have a drink. Whatever you want to apply this to my goal is to share with you a little about recruiting. Now, the number one thing, in my opinion, you can do in a business and in an organization is to find talent, hire and retain great people. And, to hire great people, there has to be some alignment with where that organization is going. So I share with you just a little bit of my opinion about the psychology of recruiting. First of all, if you're again in our business or just in general, in my opinion, it's not about if the candidate can start in the position or likes the idea of sales or likes the idea of management. It's whether or not we feel it's a good fit for their skill sets and for their potential. It's a very different way of looking at evaluating a candidate. Now, I know, in my opinion, in the years of recruiting and building our organization and what I do day to day, in my younger years of recruiting, it was a lot of explaining and frankly trying to sell people on what I was doing. I was so excited about it, and my natural positive passion, my energy came across the wrong way. And so learning how to control that energy and control the emotional side of things is huge in the recruiting process. Now, when you learn that, you can move into actually learning how to recruit and ask tough questions and really figure out someone's value. There's an old story of I read recently in a book about how recruiters operate in the military. And the story goes, there's a Navy recruiter, an Army recruiter, and a Marine, and they went into a high school. And the Navy recruiter stood up in front of a lot of these high school seniors and had this PowerPoint presentation about the Navy and how fantastic the Navy is and everything. The Army recruiter had a similar approach. He stood up in front of everybody and had this PowerPoint presentation. And then the Marine stood up and kind of peered out over the crowd and looked at everyone there for a second, had no PowerPoint presentation, and said, "I don't think you guys will cut it. I don't think anyone in this room is willing to go through the mental, physical, and emotional challenge of going through boot camp and to become a Marine. Now, if you think otherwise, I'll be in the back." It's very interesting, right? So, but his point was that if someone wants to be a Marine, what he did is essentially filtered out everyone that wasn't willing to do the work, wasn't willing to go through the challenges of becoming a Marine. Now, for the people that were, the few that were, then spoke to the few. And so in recruiting in general, it's not about hiring a ton of people. It's not about having a ton of people follow you, whatever organization, whatever business you're in. It's more about finding the right people with the right values, the right alignment. And so another kind of interesting thought about, I don't know if you guys know this in the military, but the Marines in particular, the very best Marines become recruiters. It's an honor to be a recruiter in the Marines because they want their best people to eye talent. They want their best people to attract talent. And in the business I'm in, I feel the same way. I feel our recruiters and the people that are in the front lines of finding talent are some of the best people we have in our organization. And so that's number one, is the psychology of recruiting is finding the few people that align with where you're going and what you want to accomplish. And I know that's not easy. It's a very big challenge. So that's point number one. Number two is it takes the 10 to attract the 10. So kind of similar to the Marine psychology of the best Marines become recruiters. The keys in recruiting, especially in this virtual world that we're in my opinion, there's three really, really important keys. Number one is the balance between energy and charisma and understanding the business you're in. So sometimes, again, people are young, and as they're learning the recruiting side of things, there's this kind of cookie cutter way of doing things. There's obviously, different systems that are in place to teach people recruiting. And, oftentimes if somebody's young at the recruiting role, is they don't put their own personality into things. They ask very basic questions, and it's very, very cookie cutter. So you got to learn how to have the charisma and the positive energy and the passion come through. And it's so hard over, we're talking on the computer right now, right? So it's so hard to do that in the world that we're in. But it's important to learn that balance. And again, a huge challenge. Another thing that I feel super important in the virtual world is the knowledge you have about your industry, about the history of your business, about your company in general that you work with, the people internally and some of their stories, their backgrounds, and essentially having complete alignment with where you're going. No one cares where you've been, where your company has been. It doesn't matter for anyone that works in my office, in particular in my company. It doesn't matter that we've opened 20, 30 locations all over the country. It doesn't matter. People want to know where you're going. I remember being a young entrepreneur, 23 years old, running my first company. 60 people I employed that first year in business. I had no track record. I had no, foundation. People, frankly, my mom, I remember describing me, I was running around with a chicken with my head cut off. That was the description my mom gave me. She's like, I don't understand what you do, but you have a ton of people that work with you. But they didn't follow me back then. They didn't, it wasn't because of what I'd done in my past. I was 23 years old. I was a very young entrepreneur. They followed me because of my passion of where I was going, what I wanted to accomplish. So you don't have to have a track record of business. You don't have to have a track record of, successful businesses you've opened or whatever. You just have to have a lot of, moving into number three, a lot of confidence in what you stand for and who you are. And most importantly, who you're becoming. And people follow confidence. I see it every day in my children. Not so good when I was a kid, because some of those, kids with confidence were kind of the kids that got in trouble a lot. You know what I mean? But I followed them when I was a kid. I threw rocks at houses because my next door neighbor was super cool and he was confident. He's like, this is what we're doing. Not a good thing, right? But we all follow people with confidence. So if there's anything of these three things, when you're a 10, you're attracting a 10, and the keys in the virtual world, there's anything that you can lean on if you're young into the recruiting world, it's that confidence piece. The other things like knowledge and understand the business, these are things you'll learn over time, and you can ask some of your leadership team or your managers and your partners to kind of go into more details over time. But the number 2 point is it takes a 10 to be a 10, to attract a 10. And with that said, you know, I read some of the books I've read recently. I even have a picture in my office in our training room of a guy named John Wooden. I don't know if you guys know John Wooden, but anybody that lives out in California, he was a basketball coach at UCLA. I took a picture. I actually got an autographed picture from John Wooden a few years ago from a charity event that I was at. And just to kind of, I'm going to read some of his statistics that he has. He was called the Wizard of Westwood from 1910 to 2010. He won 10 NCAA championships, 38 straight NCAA tournament victories, 88-game winning streak over 4 seasons, 19 conference championships, 4 undefeated seasons at 30-0, and he was a Hall of Famer as a player and a coach. And he's got a ton of books, and there's a ton of YouTube videos, some, you know, and TED Talks and different things that talk to John Wooden. And he's a pretty incredible human being. One of my business coaches, Ken Gutnick, actually had a chance to meet with Wooden when he went to UCLA, you know, because that's where, before he became an entrepreneur, he was at UCLA for a bit and got a chance to speak to him. And, you know, I'll tell you, John Wooden became John Wooden because of some of the people he recruited. And, you know, and point number 3 is simply, it really takes one All-American to start or to work with your organization to attract more All-Americans. And so that's why it's so important, and again, in the business we're in, a lot of us on this call, to never miss out on an opportunity to take an interview if you're asked to do that, right? To give somebody an evaluation. And so John Wooden recruited a guy named Lou Alcindor. Some of you guys may not know who Lou is. Also known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. One of the best basketball players of all time. And because of Kareem, they recruited him. They got him to go to UCLA. Other people followed. He was such a highly touted recruit that he then, by him going to UCLA, other talented people went to UCLA. And, you know, John Wooden, over the years, recruited people like Bill Walton, Keith Wilkes, Gail Goodich. Those are 4 Hall of Famers. And, you know, and I'll tell you, there's another person in basketball that did pretty well for years, Dean Smith out of North Carolina. He was also well known in the college basketball game as far as being an amazing recruiter. You know, he's a guy who recruited another pretty good basketball player named Michael Jordan. Some of you guys may know who that is, as well as Vince Carter and a few others. But again, it only takes one great individual to be recruited to then have others believe in your vision, believe in what you want to accomplish. And I'll tell you some things about John Wooden, things that he did that weren't very normal in the recruiting space. So I read an article about how he recruited, right? So the first thing John Wooden looked at, it wasn't basketball and the talent of the individual. The first thing he looked at was the grades of the student athlete, because he wanted someone who cared about their education first before he wanted someone that wanted to be a great basketball player. The second thing he looked at was how he treated his family, how he treated people in the inner circle of that, you know, student athlete's life. Because in his eyes, if you had someone who had strong family values, then it's someone that he could work with. And then the third thing he did is he had 6 different coaches give evaluations of the student athlete, because he didn't want to depend on one person's opinion. And the very last thing he did when he recruited talent was he looked at their quickness and talent on the basketball court, because obviously he knew there was a certain level of talent that he wanted. But it's interesting that he looked at it that way. Most college basketball players don't look at it that way. They look at it very differently. And again, if you read any of his books, which I've read a few of them, his basketball practices were filled with things like tying your shoes. He would literally have Division I athletes spend time during practice putting on their socks properly and tying their shoes, which is crazy to think that he'd keep things that basic. But in his mind, if you didn't take care of the basics, you didn't take care of the fundamentals, you didn't do the little things right, then it would affect you in the most important times, when the game is on the line, when you have a blister on your toe. So it's a very, very interesting way. And then again, there's other, I've read some articles in the last few days about this, but it talked about how John Wooden, even though they didn't win all the time, they did win a lot. There's a lot of times where they lost games when he felt they won, and he celebrated the game. Although on the basketball court they lost, he celebrated the effort of his team and what they did on the court. Although the scoreboard didn't necessarily say that they won. Again, a very interesting way to look at leadership and recruiting. So that's number 3, is understanding that it only takes one amazing person to join your organization, your team, to make it, really take off. A couple little things in regards to just skills of the recruiting piece of things. If you guys are in a role where you're looking to recruit or looking to hire talent and you're looking to understand a candidate, point number 4 is just learning how to peel back the onion. So I don't know if you guys ever go to Outback Steakhouse. I don't know if you guys have those in your city or where you are. There's this bloomin' onion thing, appetizer that's at Outback, and it's pretty delicious. But the idea of peeling back the onion is oftentimes people that are young in the recruiting world, and then it's not just in our business. I got a really good friend of mine who owns a staffing company nearby, and we talk a lot about these things. And young recruiters do very surface level questions. Things like, why did you go to this college? Why did you study this area of study? What do you think your last employer would say about your strengths? And the key is, it's okay to ask those questions, but the seasoned recruiters will get deeper in the questioning, and they'll ask open-ended questions. So give an example. If I asked, okay, why did you go to Penn State? Well, of course, the obvious reason is because it's the best school in the country, right? I mean, that beyond that, teasing. So, but why did you go to Penn State? Say somebody was interviewing me, and my answer would be, I wanted to go to a great school that had a great business school and also had a great soccer team, top 20 in the country. Okay, so top 20 in the country. So winning is important to you, is what I'm hearing. So what are some things, if you went to a Division I school like Penn State, what are some things you had to do to compete at that level? And then I would share a story about competing at that level. All right, so now that you've competed at that level, how did you balance? If you played Division I soccer, how did you balance your schools and your studies? What kind of GPA did you have? And then again, pinning down, like, how did you do this? Who went to school with you? What are the challenges you had in school while you did it? When did you decide to go to Penn State? Did you have other options? How did your family react to that? You're from South Florida and you went to Penn State. That's a big risk, right? So the idea here is peeling back the onion, is really asking deeper and deeper and deeper questions to try to understand the psychology and how people think. And my attitude is, when it comes to recruiting, if I can understand someone's thought process and why they made decisions in the past, then it's going to give me an insight on what their decisions could be in the future. It's not always perfect, but it's going to give me clues to what their decisions could be in the future. So it's super important. Again, that's more of a skill piece I want to share today, but it's important to think on your feet. But great questions come from listening. And back to a point earlier about having that balance of energy and charisma in business. So, and that comes with time. That's definitely not an easy thing to do, but it's a skill if you want to be a great recruiter for whatever you're doing. It's definitely a skill that's important. All right. And then last but not least, guys, recruiting does not stop when they start with your organization. They work with your team, when they work with your company. It does not stop. In my opinion, that's when recruiting really starts. Getting someone to join an organization, join a team, join a company. Yes, there's a process to that. Yes, there's questions. Yes, there's, definitely decisions that are made. But the real recruiting starts when they actually join your team. Because what's going to happen is that person over the next 30 to 90 days, and a lot of articles I read about retention of employees and retention of people in organizations, a lot of them were talking about how they give people actually 30 to 60-day trials. There's, an organization, Mind Valley, that I've talked about a few times in the last few weeks. Some of their recruiting practices is that they don't require anyone, even though they do require people to sign contracts in some of these big companies. They do a 6-month evaluation, and at 6 months is when they're going to make a decision if that person's fully hired or not, from the employer perspective, and frankly, from an employee perspective, right? And so when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh man, that's so interesting, because in the business I'm in, really in the first 30 days of employment is when we're going to find out who we really hired and if we chose the right candidate, right? Because anyone, and frankly, in the world we're in, especially over a computer, I mean, anyone can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be great in sales, I'm going to be, I'm going to study my materials, I'm going to learn the objections, I'm going to, whatever. A lot of people can say a lot of things, and then from the employee and the employer perspective. But really what people are doing in their first 30, 60, 90 days in any organization is now they're watching. Now they're looking at what's really happening, right? And they're, and this unfortunately happens in corporate America all the time, where, someone's recruited to do a certain thing, and they're promised certain things, they're promised opportunity, promised growth. And then over the course of 60 days or 6 months or 5 years, the business, they start seeing that those things unfortunately aren't happening. And so in my opinion, the real recruiting starts in the business I'm in. It starts when they show up on their first day. It starts with having an amazing relationship. It starts with you coming through for the things that you said you were going to do in the recruiting process. It starts with your character and your word. There's an old saying that one of my coaches told me. He said, again, a very young entrepreneur I was, he said, Ken, you don't have a track record. You don't have a history of success. Your word has to be gold. They have to be able to take it to the bank. So if you say you're going to do something, you say you're going to meet with them, you say you're going to have materials ready, you say you're going to have, things prepared and supporting them, then you have to come through for them. And that's something called the emotional bank account. And there'll be, as people working with you and they're joining your team, joining your organization, little by little, you're going to be making deposits in that emotional bank account, or they're going to be withdrawals. I didn't say that right. Withdrawals. I can't even say it. So it's going to be withdrawals from that emotional bank account. So the key is follow through with what you're promising people and what you're sharing with them. And not only with your character, but that relationship is huge. One thing I love doing in the first couple of weeks is somebody joins my team, joins my business, my company. I just like getting a drink, like having a breakfast, Sometimes if they're into sports, then I try to align their sports. If they do things like I do, if it's golfing or soccer or whatever, I try to do my best to create some time and some space to just spend time outside of the workplace, because I want to get to know people. It means something to me when I hire somebody. It means something to me to help people reach their goals. And I want to know what's important to them. I want to know what really wakes them up every day, and why they work, why they do what they do. And so relationship is huge. And keep in mind, your organization, your company, where you're going, the growth side of the business and whatever business you're in, and your vision is the reason why people will follow you long term. They say that that CEOs in today's business world it's really become CVOs. So Chief Executive Officer is really becoming a Chief Visionary Officer. Because business owners, instead of talking about the day-to-day happenings in business, they got to start, where are we going? I listen to people like, Elon Musk and some of these people that, run these massive organizations, but they always talk about, it's not what they're doing now, it's where they're going, how they're going to, make an impact on the world, right? How they're going to make a difference in the world. And, listen, my vision in the business I'm in, with some of the partners that we have, I see this going to 1,000+ entrepreneurs, tens of thousands of people all over the world getting a chance to work and to have a positive impact. Not only make money in what they do, but also give back to the community, to be in different countries, to be in different languages, to make money in different currencies. Like that's my vision. In our office, we have a saying going on right now that says, grow so much in the next 30 days that you have to reintroduce yourself to your family. That's what I'm talking to my team about, that they're going to grow so much personally and professionally in the next 30 days that they're going to have to reintroduce themselves to their family. There's another saying that's probably not appropriate, but it's called unfuckwithable as well. I talked about it a few weeks ago. But just to build the confidence internally about who you are, what you stand for, that nothing in the world is going to knock you down. And you have this like armor around you, that you're going to be a strong person. You're going to be a strong human being, right? And so remember, as you're growing in leadership, people will be, will follow you in whatever organization you're in, whatever business you're in, because they feel their life will be better because they're around you. So if you're young into your career, and I know we're wrapping up here, I'm going to keep things at 30 minutes today. If you're young into your career and you're just learning about leadership and business and recruiting and all these different areas, just remember, you have to lean on your work ethic. Your work ethic will inspire people, right? And, I know I said this a week or two ago on some of the, calls we've had, but stop trying to inspire other people. Become inspiring yourself. Stop trying to inspire other people and become inspiring yourself. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for jumping on. Again, I'm recording this call, so I'm going to throw it up on some of the links I have. Again, I got my one of my partners behind the scene, Christina, is going to be helping me out with a lot of these things. But